Thank you, Annie. Let me start by introducing this outstanding panel. Catalina Castro with a degree in philosophy and PhD student in communication. Kata, I would like to be like you. I will take up my PhD at some point. And responsible of digital communication with the Universidad Austral. Silvina Giano, professor of research methodology of Universidad Austral and Universidad de San Martin, and manager of tourism with the City of Buenos Aires government. She carried out research for a number of companies and public agencies as a freelance professional, and she has been my professor some weeks ago. And finally, we have Carla, a staff colleague, agronomist, and teacher of biology at the secondary level. She was part of Aapresid, driving new projects, creating demand and strategic partnerships, and she also coordinates the project Aula Aapresid Classroom. So let us jumpstart this panel. Like Annie said, it's about the youth perception on agriculture. The goal is to drill our perception. What is the way organizations use to communicate and the need to articulate agronomy with social science as is communication? So let us jump to the questions, if you agree. So, Cata, let us talk about the platform on research and business. What is the goal of the Universidad Austral? Tell us if any research has been done, which, and how has the collaboration of the postgraduate school collaborated with the platform of agribusiness. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here, listening to us. Thank you for showing your interest. We are thrilled about what we do, so let us hope we can convey part of this fascination. And let me thank Aapresid and Lucia for giving us the opportunity to be here to tell about what we do. The platform is created by the Food and Agribusiness Center and the Postgraduate School of the Universidad Austral. This is the result of the interest of farmers themselves. A group of farmers created and established Aapresid under the presidency of Pedro Viñó, and they approached the Universidad Austral driven by the question they had on how to connect, or the lack of connection vis-a-vis society. They had the self-perception of the attributes of agriculture, but they were also aware of the fact that these attributes were not being communicated to society in general. As we heard in the previous channel, agriculture is a complex ecosystem of food chains, and even if it's boosting, innovative, powerful, I'm talking about the Argentinian one, it is not deprived of other complexities with other players and with society. And there are a number of agendas that pierce through agriculture that are hard to manage, and even more so in a system like Argentinian, which is as vast, diverse, and large as a country. But all this complexity and wealth needs to be managed. So I promise I will get to the point eventually. But this context is required to help you understand. So the goal was to create a forum for dialogue, research, and support to start teaching the tools purporting to have a joint and agreed upon communication targeted at an audience that requires to be better known. That is why the research foundation is also added to the platform, because in order to manage the strategic communication, we need to know our audience. And this is where all this research comes into play. Our starting point was an assumption, youth-centric, because research has as its target audience the youth, who were the most away from the agricultural industry because of some prejudices, misinformation or lack of information. That is why we focused on youth. We carried out 3 researches. In 2018, we carried out the first, which was the most exploratory in nature. We approached timidly the way they thought about if they knew somebody who was a reference for agriculture, what part of agriculture impacted on their lives, how close or how far away they felt from agriculture, what their conversation topics were, what their concerns were. Then we carried out a second research focusing more on their perceptions regarding food production. And very markedly, these agendas I just referred to come into sight that were only emerging in 2018. These are the agendas that go through the youth and have to do with environmentalism, veganism, taking care of animals, and digitalization and innovation. And from there, we moved on to the research that took place in 2023, the goal of which was to know if these rather urban, from large cities, youth, not only from the city of Buenos Aires and the greater Buenos Aires, like was the case with the previous ones, but from other large cities, from programs that had nothing to do with the agriculture, like law or marketing or graphic design, to name a few. If at some point it appeared on their radar of interest to get a hold of agriculture as part of their professional interest, and we came to a vacuum. And what this research gives us is a wealth of research, because researching is fascinating, let alone in social domains like culture, like trending topics, like agendas. So all this path of the research results in lots of knowledge and layer upon layer of information. And we know a lot, but we still need to know a lot more, fortunately. Sorry, I forgot about the part where eating reaches something. Well, the baseline of this platform is multidisciplinary and interinstitutional. That is why we coordinate between the business center and the communication postgraduate school. So when we approach some work on agriculture, we do it from the 2 outlooks. We enrich ourselves mutually, and this gives more nuances when the times come to put up a training or create more research. Excellent. So what happened to me, which was way before I joined Aapresid, I think Universidad Austral is a pioneer communicating the postgraduate school with the platform, because I know that some other universities still have not done it. And they do not teach communication subjects linked to agro. what IPC does. And this, I believe, is essential because we have professionals, agronomists working on domains such as communicators, institutional relations. There are many of them at Aapresid, and I think it is fantastic. And I'm not saying this because this is where I started, but nevertheless. Okay, let us move on to research. Tell us about the specific goals of the research, what methodology was applied, what advantages laid in the use of that methodology. Good morning. I was not sure my micro was on. Well, thank you for being here, for listening to us, and thanks, Aapresid, for the invitation that let us tell you about this research. As Cata said, this research, the one we are discussing today, focused on understanding mostly what young university student perceptions are on agriculture for their potential development as employers or as an area where they can carry out some initiatives. Our specific goals was to understand these perceptions, what they think, the good and the negative sides for their career to be employers or employee, what strengths and weaknesses are there in the agribusiness, and what intersections there are with that as a potential ground for career development, and understanding in general what they think about agriculture, agribusiness, and what link there is between that and their agendas, the agendas Cata just referred to, what is of importance to them, that is innovation, taking care of the environment, of animals, exactly what Cata said. So, how we approach this research, like with all other researches, we carried out qualitative research in focus groups with university students from programs not directly linked to agriculture, maybe engineering, economics, design, human resources, marketing, IT, the law. These are profiles that are required and necessary as part of the agribusiness chain, but we did not include those following programs directly linked to the industry. These young people were following the last 2 years, about to graduate. They were residents in AMBA, that is the city of Buenos Aires and Greater Buenos Aires, and large cities of the interior, Tandil, Salta, Neuquén, Rosario, La Plata. The idea was to listen to young people whom a priori we thought were closer or further away from the agribusiness chain. And inside the groups, we had diversity of students from private and public universities, from the interior and the capital, and gender diverse representation as well. Why qualitative and no other technique? Because the goal of these studies is to get insights, that is, tools to use this information to create a better communication. And qualitative research allows for going deeper, that is, going after what is underlying what these young people tell us, how they feel about this industry, why they think what they think, what the myths are, what preconceptions are underlying their perceptions on agro as a breeding ground for their professional development. I keep learning from you, Silvia. It is input for my thesis that I will submit next year. I find it excellent that the AMBA region has been targeted. But the reality is that people living in the Amber region are not linked to the agribusiness. That is why Aapresid wanted to come to Buenos Aires with this motto, everything is connected, to start demystifying this reality which separates the urban from the agricultural domains. And now coming back to you, please tell us which were the main findings of your research and which differences you have noted among the perceptions of students. Okay, I will try to summarize. Then the research will be available if you want to have a look at it, but I will summarize the main emergent factors. We have results on two levels. Let us explain it as such. On the one side, what they expect of the future, and on the other, what they think about the agricultural sector as a career. They are at a turning point because they are about to graduate. They expect that work is going to be at the center. Once they get the degree, new opportunities will open up for them. And in connection to the employment, they expect good compensation, but beyond salaries, other factors start to come into play and they become relevant, such as flexibility, remote work, hybrid work. Hybrid work is here to stay because they cannot think of any work that does not allow for this possibility, where geography or borders are no longer a barrier because remote work is possible, good work environment, career development possibilities, empathy, and having their values in sync with those of the organization. They cannot picture themselves working for organizations with whose values they do not align. And how the organization manages all these topics, for example, the environment or sustainability. On these topics, there is a marked difference between this generation and previous ones vis-a-vis what they expect about work. And what happens with the industry and the strength? One of the strengths is that youth continue to stress that this is strategic for our country. No challenges there. It is also an industry that brings together large-scale companies once they recognize them as being linked to agriculture. And for this, we performed an exercise. We asked them which companies they recognize from the sector, and especially in AMBA, the spontaneous link is with heavy-duty machines. They couldn't go beyond that, but when we brought to the table at some point in the research, we would show them brands linked to agriculture like Arcor, Serenissima, Bayer, Biogenesis, Bago, you name it. And yeah, these brands were of interest to them as employment prospects because they align them with possibility to have a brand that would let them move to another company then, because they are prestigious, renowned companies at the international level, but they do not make the spontaneous link to the sector.
Es una primera debilidad.
Now, which are the weaknesses? This is the first weakness. Not to think of this sector as a first opportunity. So we said, what are you going to do? You will have your first job soon. Agribusiness would never come up as a first choice. Other choices came up, even when asking students in inland Argentina, even less in Buenos Aires. So there is no awareness. Second, weakness. They think they need to have specific knowledge about agriculture. I need to be part of an agricultural family. I know nothing about agriculture. I need to have specific knowledge about that sector so as to be able to do my job there. Third, and this happens especially in Buenos Aires and the greater Buenos Aires area, students didn't know whether they had to go and live in rural areas to work in agriculture. Then later they would say, well, remote work, it might be done, but initially what came up was that it might be necessary to move to inland Argentina to work in this sector. Then other issues came up, for example, the fact that they were not aware of job opportunity. They had not seen any search for employers in that area. So we would show them real searches of companies in the industry that were looking for professionals like them. And what we got was surprise. They had never imagined that was happening. They had never taken notice of that. Apparently, those jobs came up in portals that were not the portal they would usually query. And there is a third point that we would also see in the industry in general. Those who are not close to the sector think that it is kind of a delayed, outdated sector, far from technology. Those are perceptions. And on the other hand, there is the myth or the perception that it is an extraction activity that does not take care of the environment, of the animals, etc., which we said is key for them. And now the good news, because it's not all bad news, we also got good news in our research. We found very interesting lines of work, and this is why I would like to start our fourth piece of research. Everything related to bioeconomy, agro-bio industry did generate a lot of interest. Even though they didn't know exactly what it was about, their perceptions were related to technology, care for the environment, circular economy, and this was interesting to them and placed the sector in a different position. So, in brief, we found there is lack of information about the opportunities they may have to work in the agricultural sector, lack of information about what the agricultural sector is doing today in terms of value technology, agribusiness, bioeconomy related projects, and this presents major challenges but also great opportunities for those in charge of communication in the sector. Well, Carla is going to talk about this. I'd like to emphasize the role of companies and the role of organizations such as Aapresid. And this is my case. I've not introduced myself, but I have a degree in political sciences, a master's degree in communication. I'm in charge of public affairs with Aapresid. I thought I would never be hired at Aapresid. I came from the southern part of Buenos Aires, Avellaneda. I didn't know anything about agriculture. I've learned a lot, and today I cannot say I'm in love with agronomy, agriculture, but I love it. I love hearing to Carla. I always say I admire her a lot. Well, you will be able to listen to her. Let's go to our last part. Catalina, from your vision as professors and researchers, what are the communication strategies that you think might be used to improve things for the sector? Because people say that there is no good communication in agriculture. What do you think? Well, several things. I believe that the agriculture sector is doing much better than some years ago. The teams have become much more professional, and I think there is something that is very valuable, that is curiosity and the willingness to go beyond that gate and that fence that is far from them. In another room, there is a session about urbanism. I think that's brilliant. I'm here, but otherwise I would be there listening to that panel. Realizing in agriculture that the place where you are standing now, what is it, agriculture 5.0, 6.0? And realizing that people think you're at 2.0 may do away with your motivation or may be an amazing opportunity, because this is what you are. In the previous panel, people said you have to be and prove you are like that. You already are creative, innovating agricultural sector, but people don't know this, even if you do those things. And the good news is that this agricultural sector 6.0 is connected with these agendas, this purpose, and this interest. And this is another important part which we think is fundamental. Going back to your question, first of all, we think it is important to reinforce what we already have. The Argentinian agricultural sector is considered a strategic sector and fundamental for the country. This is what the youth thinks, and it is part of the national identity of Argentinians. Agriculture in Argentina is almost the same thing, so we have to reinforce that. And if you go one step upwards, you also need to talk about the players in agriculture. These young people were not able to mention people or companies that are key players in agriculture. In our research in 2021, the only person whom they could associate with agriculture was De Angeli. And they didn't mention his name correctly either, but that was the only person they could link with agriculture. So there's a major challenge there. And there, I think you should emphasize this vision, this position, which is a present for you, but they think that you are in the past. So there is a lot to be done there, a lot to communicate. The challenge is big, but the opportunity is huge. I'd like to point out two things you mentioned. On the one hand, you never use the word sector, because at the communication level, this is very important. We no longer talk about the sector, but about agriculture, bioindustry, bioeconomy. But the term sector is no longer used, and I think that is one of the communication strategies we have started to implement. And on the other hand, and I will now give the floor to Carla, this concept of urbanism. As I've already said, Carla, I admire you a lot. I love hearing you. The slogan for our Congress is "Everything is connected." So based on this, how would you explain to the audience, how would you explain this concept to the audience? And what is Aapresid's mission, value, pillars, projects? Thank you all for being here. Well, I'm also passionate about Aapresid. I love it. I think it's a nice story of farmers and growers who got together to take care of the soil. That's very important, because land is one of the most important organic carbon reservoirs. This is very important to mitigate climate change. About 30 years ago, farmers got together to take care of the soil, and this is how the No-Till Farmers Association was created. The goal was to protect the soil from erosion. Today, 30 days later, the paradigm has changed. We're no longer talking about not disturbing the soil, but other types of care, soil nutrition, more integrated, holistic management. Within Aapresid, we have two nice projects related to the young people, which is Aapresid Joven for the youth and Aula Aapresid. We're using the term re-urbanism because now we're not talking of separate systems but of joint systems. And I'd like to encourage you to do away with myths. It's not that you don't have to be an engineer or a vet to be linked to agriculture. And this should go back all the way to primary and secondary education. Local economies, regional economies, talking in high school about telecommunication, renewable energy, digital agriculture, as they were saying. And in this way, we will open up the opportunities for the youth. And those courses, as Lou was saying, will also be able to contribute to agricultural and livestock production and bioeconomy. The concept of bioeconomy was created as a result of this, the mitigation of climate change and the need to turn fossil economy into a more biological economy. Another myth I'd like to do away with is that farmers are no longer those people who would get up at 5 a.m. There are other professions where you have to get up at 5. Accountants, lawyers who live in the outskirts have to take thousands of buses. We're not the only ones who get up early. I think this should be balanced. And Aapresid is a project that started some time ago. We've also changed our mindset. We realize that we cannot do things on our own. We need to have a multidisciplinary team to work in a collaborative manner. And I'd like to invite both of you to work with the members of the Aula projects. They are all Aapresid members, willing to generate changes. I'd love you to listen to the youth. We know that we cannot do things on our own. I'd like to mention those people. There are different projects, Barbechando, Argentinos por la Educación. There are different organizations that focus a lot on education. And we do need the support of educators to add agricultural knowledge into the education curricula. Talking about doing away with myth, there is a message from Juan Pablo. I'm not sure whether you're still here. Great. I think this question has already been answered, but it says, it looks like there is a contradiction between perceiving the sector is outdated and not responsible in terms of the environment. But on the other side, we know that there is a lot of progress. Can you talk about this? We believe that in terms of any kind of production, whether it's livestock and agriculture or any other kind, there are people who do things the wrong way. We promote sustainable production systems. We do this based on 3 major pillars, which is science, networking, and innovation. So we promote sustainable projects through big networks. We train farmers, growers, advisors, agricultural profession. There might be professions in agriculture that do not do things correctly, but I'm speaking on behalf of Aapresid. Here we promote environmental care as one of our main pillars. Since I've not yet been told we have to close, I'd like to know whether there are any questions or doubts in the audience. Do you have any questions for the speakers? You can share with us your questions, comments, opinions, suggestions. Hello. this session has been very interesting. I've just got my political sciences degree. I'm working on my dissertation. The topic of my dissertation was forestry certification. And my question is the following. In the field of political sciences, I'm close to agriculture, but how do you think we should take our first step? I think bioeconomy opens up the sector a lot and has a more social, comprehensive, organic perspective. That's really interesting. I am from the province of Santa Fe, and the UNL has several courses related to agriculture. And the province has a large share in agriculture. Are there any projects to integrate universities? I think it's wonderful, and I'd love to know more about this. Thank you. I'll make a brief comment, and then I will give the floor to here in the room. There is another future PhD in political sciences. She works with me. Hi, Isa. The step I took was difficult but very nice. I never thought I would work in agriculture. I have learned a lot, and I'm enjoying it a lot. It's step by step because I do not have the technical or theoretical concepts that are frequently necessary. Every time I've attended a meeting, I've been there with the support of agricultural engineers, regional managers. At the beginning, I always needed their support, and now I can go on my own, and if there is a very technical question, I say, well, let me find that information for you, and that's what I do. And it's a very nice step, and I do recommend this field, and this is why I was mentioning ISA as well. I love the fact that Aapresid is adding these professions to these organizations. There are specialists in politics and communication. That's my experience. Regarding what you said about universities, and thank you for that question because I think it should be pointed out, there are two things. On the one hand, one of our motivations when doing this research came from this field too, because there were some players who would tell us they were concerned about the generational integration. This was not only happening in families, but also in companies. So it was necessary to find new talents, and that was a concern for people. And we really verified that through our research. Those potential talents were not considering agriculture as a potential employer. And in the focus groups, young people said, why is it that representatives of agriculture do not come to our universities? So it's not that universities should go out to agriculture, but agriculture should turn back and say, hey, look, this is what we are doing. We're at this level of innovation, digitalization, research. We're doing state-of-the-art things. We need you. We need university students. We need students from your school, from your university. I think a more proactive attitude is needed. And this is related to the previous question about communication. It is difficult but fundamental. This is something that has to be done in agriculture. It's not that agriculture is not good at communicating. There is a lot of communication, but the point is who we are communicating things to. I think there is a endogamic thing here. It's difficult to step over that border, but it has to be done because there are lots of talents who are not aware of our presence, and that is a challenge. So we have to see what channels are being used in our communications. And this is the end of my comment. I don't want to bore you, but the youth, they do not feel that that agriculture was talking to them. They didn't think it was related to them, to their interests, to their channels, to their agenda. It is very difficult for young people to learn about you if you do not start building these bridges.
Un desafío.
Let me close by raising a challenge, specifically at Aapresid, who are the spokespeople using plain language, because many of us, farmers or engineers, speak a very technical language, and we fail at communicating in lay terms. So to us, in these ecosystems, it's a challenge for us to link to communication professionals who can facilitate this type of communication. And to conclude, I want to invite all these young people present here to approach our booth and learn more about our program, Aapresid Jóvenes, so that we can all get tools to grow together. We still have 3 more minutes. Anybody wishing to ask a question? Can we circulate the mic, please? Well, I don't know if we'll be able to answer both questions, but very simply, I wanted to know what differences there were in youth perceptions as regards the ones living in the interior of the country and AMBA, because you referred to the schools or universities, but what is of interest to me is to understand how the ones and the others understand the different cultures in the interior and in urban areas. Yeah, exactly. One of the main assumptions was that is why we segmented the groups. In some cases, a greater knowledge is observed from the ones residing in non-AMBA places as compared to the others. For example, this myth thinking that they should move to agricultural areas, that was more present in the ones residing in the AMBA region. Also, the knowledge of companies was deeper in the ones living in the interior, whereas the ones in the AMBA would stick to heavy-duty machinery, and that was it. For example, the ones living in the interior were more conscious about agro. For example, the ones living in the province of Neuquén were more closely aware of the companies in food and regional economies as well. Now, these things you were just referring to, that the agro is not talking to us in our study places, no, that was present everywhere. There were students from engineering, IT, law, from Córdoba, Salta, where there are other industries. For example, the mining industry approaches them in the northern part of our country. They tell them what they do, what they are working on, why it would be interesting for them to join, but they believe it's not the same in their programs of study or in seminars organized to inform them what the activity is about. Yeah, the last one. Yeah, very short. Excellent track record since the first research. What's in the pipeline for the next years? Well, next up, we are about to develop research deepening on the perception on the bioeconomy, because what came up is kind of emerging from the previous research. and the reaction and the change in the outlook was so important, what happened during the focus groups, that we said now we are going to address this. Thank you for your question. Brilliant. So, dear speakers, thank you for joining us for this panel, for this seminar, for being here. And let us give you a round of applause. Thank you for being here.